Welcome back to Instigating with Clarkey and Dre, brought to you by our friends at Larry Hudson Chevrolet Buick GMC here in beautiful Listowel, Ontario, and the Listowel Squash Courts. I'm Ryan Drury, joined by Clarkey, and we're pleased to be joined by a very special guest, longtime host and reporter on Leafs TV, one of Clarkey's old colleagues and good buddies. We are very pleased to chat Maple Leafs with Paul Hendrick. Paul, how are you?
Great, Ryan. Never an odd moment to talk Toronto Maple Leaf hockey, right? We're well into summer here, and it's a 12-month-the-year occupation for Leafs Nation, the hockey team, and this is a good time. These are exciting times for this hockey club, and they're a contending team, and why not? I know when Clarkey and I worked, it was all about storytelling time at Leafs TV. They weren't contending teams. They were teams trying to get to where Toronto is right now. And it tested us all the time, where early on in the season, you knew you weren't going to make the playoffs. And if you're working at Leafs TV, you just wanted a snippet of playoff success. And Clarkey, we didn't get much of it.
We didn't. But one of my favorite things to do was to go to the draft. And I got the honor to go to 12 straight drafts. I think it started in Raleigh in 2002, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, we went to 12 straight. What great memories I have of the draft. I'm sure you do too, but miking up guys like Nazem Kadri and Morgan Riley and Luke Shen and meeting these guys as kids. It was one of my funnest things to do at Leaf TV. Do you have any memories that stick out to any of the drafts we went to along the way?
Well, I was with Brian Duff back in the studio while you guys were on the road for the first few of those, but I got to go to my first one with you in Ottawa in 2008. That was the Luke Shen draft. Yeah. And, we got to establish a really good friendship with Luke. In fact, when I had my podcast, he was my very first guest a week and a half or so after winning the Stanley Cup. He couldn't have been more gracious, and I'll always remember him. And I think of all the players that I dealt with from the Maple Leafs, Luke's in my top 5. But that all started in Ottawa. And the storytelling and the work we did and the amount of content that John Shannon needed for his network, Leafs TV. We were only so glad to help him out with it. But 08 would be my favorite memory, just because it being my first. But we can go on, the next year his brother Braden is drafted, but Nazem Kadri, and you mentioned him. Clarkey, our relationship with the brass back then was a little different than it is now. Sure. It's a little more sealed. Yeah. We had a good idea as to who was going to be drafted. You knew who to put microphones on. Yeah. You knew where to find Nazem because all these Kadri jerseys walking into the Bell Center were just going to that particular area of the stadium. Yeah. But the relationship between at least us and media and what Leafs TV was back then and Team Brass, the scouting staff, we were on top of it. And, you and Jamie, there's a bunch of you guys who really worked hard at cultivating that relationship, and that made the draft real fun.
Yeah, it's funny because you mentioned Luke Shannon, and the last draft I was at was in Philadelphia, and you talk about maybe getting inside information. I'm pretty sure it was Philadelphia draft, or maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't that the year we got the tip-off that James Van Riemsdyk was coming to Toronto for Luke Shen?
Pittsburgh.
Okay, it was Pittsburgh. Okay, but that's the kind of information we got well before the public heard. We had a report done, sent in, and then later in the day when we heard about the trade, it was in. So you're right. I think it's definitely changed now. I don't think that anyone's getting that kind of access nowadays.
Yeah, that story. And the reason I remember Pittsburgh, my daughter Caroline was down there to see one of her friends, Jake Patterson, get drafted third round by the Detroit Red Wings. So we were going up to the lounge afterwards to meet, with Brass and to do a wrap-up bunch of stand-ups and another maybe 30 to 45 minutes content. The trade went down. Claude Lozelle, George Armstrong's there. We knew at 2:00 that the trade had gone down, but it was not going to be announced until 5:00. My daughter Caroline is there. She knew. She was sworn to secrecy. And then
Big Daddy Bob McGill, I think, got the tip off.
Bob drove Caroline and I home from Pittsburgh in about 2.5 hours. But that said, I remember Darren Drager and Damian Cox on Twitter going at it as to who was the first to break the trade. And I'm thinking, my daughter, who's second year university at Western, knew about this trade 3 hours ago. But we were privy to that. And there was a level of trust. Things changed. The market, more so social media, right? It's really just exploded. And I can understand why there's all this secrecy, but it was a far different game back then. But we were in the inner circle. You remember Montreal in 2009, Berkey, coming out with stuff that got him fined. And there's Jamie and I forget who else camera-wise in there just shooting all the stuff that we were allowed to put on the air.
Yeah. Well, we had a mic on him at one point, and I think it might have been Armando or anyway, but just like I was in the draft room, like watching the draft and recording it, like when Barry Trapp and then Dave Morrison, Fergie sort of put a stop to it, but yeah, like just the access we had at Leafs TV. It's too bad the network's not here anymore. I find as a Leaf fan now, I'm really underserved as a fan. I want to watch a post-game show. As much as I didn't like doing 2-hour post-game shows, producing them at times, I miss it. And it's just the nature of Bell and Rogers, I guess, not wanting the competition. I don't know, but I miss that big time. You inside the Leaf dressing room and Bob Harwood at the time. Like I feel ripped off as a Leaf fan right now.
Well, I remember it was back-to-backs. We were in Pittsburgh one night, Philadelphia the next, and I get a phone call at 8 in the morning, and we'd flown from Pitt to Philly. It was like 6 a.m., not much sleep. And I was getting just a bit of sleep. Those back-to-backs were tough, and it was a call from Leafs TV. Or Leafs Nation Network, Michael Gelfand, and Michael just saying, we're going in a bit of a different direction here. And again, came down to cost. And I said to them, we're not going to do any more live pre or post. We're going to do it all to tape. And I think a lot of it's cost and the nature of the business. Everything is just little vignettes, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, you do realize that this team is about to turn the corner. This was the year they finally made the playoffs. This was February. It was still well before a playoff spot was even in their vision. And I said, Gelf, and there were a few others, including HR on this call. I thought I was getting fired, but it wasn't that. And I was very respectful of where they were coming from. But I just said, we finally got a team that is going to be transcending. And now we're going to this. I said, this is when we should really be cranking it up. But you're going to do what you're going to do. And I want to continue to work and get paid. And I love what I do. And I love working for this hockey club. So just tell me what I have to do. But that was a heartbreaking moment in Philadelphia on that particular morning, hearing that from MLSE as they decided, Shannon Hosford, Michael Gelfand, and I think that was it on that call, along with a person from HR, unless I was going to fly off the handle. I wasn't going to do that. Like, are you kidding me? We got to go and travel to all these games and still provide content on the road, but I missed the live element, then at Gate 5, right on the west side of the building, right there. I thought we had a good show. We worked hard at it.
Did have a good show.
Yeah, but where is it now? It's gone. It's in the graveyard and moving in a different direction. I guess I've got to respect that, because the business has really changed in many ways, and I'm just grateful we had a chance to be a part of it, and we had a chance to work together. So that was all great.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're certainly right. Paul, I feel, Clarkey, you're talking from the perspective of a Leaf fan, and obviously a guy who worked for the organization and did a lot of good work for a really long time. I feel like every major league sports team should be having content like that. Like, and they do it, but they cheap out on it in a lot of ways. Yeah, and I'm offended by that, in the sense that we're doing this show right now, Clarkey. We've been doing this for a while. Like, you can put out pretty good content and not have it cost $50,000 or something. Yeah. Like, you can do very good content with the technological advances we have these days, and not have it cost a bunch of money, and get some sponsors and make it happen. And it's embarrassing to me that these multi-million, if not multi-billion-dollar corporations, even at the NHL level, are not doing more stuff like this. It's embarrassing to me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I want to get Henny's opinion. But like, I watch other teams broadcast now. I do have access to them, and not everyone, but a lot of the games I watch, they'll go to a post-game show, and they'll do a half-hour post-game show. We'll hear live from the coach. What we used to do, and we were the leader in that, right? But now we got to get to Sports Central or Sportsnet or whatever, right? And that's the thing, right, Henny?
Well, we were Leafs TV. Then there was Flames TV. Then there was Habs TV. Then there was Sens TV.
Yeah.
I mean, and then, of course, Michael and others, I guess, came in and we got to change it. I mean, we've got to call it Leafs Nation Network. No, you don't have to change it. You don't have to. No. It's not potato. It's Leafs TV. I've got a couple here. It's funny. I still have a couple of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it'd be like renaming your kid,
I know, you're right. That's a great way to put it. That's a great way to put it. And like I have to go back to the drafts for a second, because I did forget one unbelievable moment for me at the draft. And I want to take you back to Minnesota, and you probably know where I'm going with this, but I had the pleasure of having Stuart Percy live with me for months. And I knew he was on the radar just because I was in some of the scout meetings. But when it came time to draft, what was he, 30th or 29th? I can't remember the number.
25th or whatever. Yeah.
High
20s.
And when his name was called, I was like shaking. I was so happy for him and his family. That was probably the most incredible moment after. And then when they come after they get drafted and they go up on the stage, Ryan, then they go underneath and they meet the media down there. He came over and gave me a hug, and the guys are looking at me like, oh, you must know this guy. But obviously Henny knew, but that was an incredible moment. And just seeing those kids on what is, for a lot of them, their best day as a pro
ever.
It really is. It really is.
And you think of that in that draft, they had 2 first-round picks, Tyler Biggs, big star out of Oshawa and University of Miami of Ohio, big, a crusher and a rusher. But his dad was a scorer, and I think Tyler thought he might have been a combination of both. And I remember Bob McGill telling him when Tyler was with the Marlies, you're either going to be, a rusher or a crusher. Otherwise, you're going to be an usher. And, Ty never got to play a game in the National Hockey League, and it just didn't work, as you said. And Stu played 12 games in the National Hockey League. And I remember him making training camp. Maybe it was a year later in that opening game against Montreal. And I think he was on the ice for a late goal, and that really affected him and his confidence. And he was never quite the same player, but a tremendous pro. But it's where, from a scouting perspective, you've got to nail those 2 first-round picks. And you think about it, everybody says, well, the Leafs got Austin. Sure, that was a no-brainer. No guarantees that William Nylander is going to be great. I can go on and on, right? Freddie Gauthier. It's not an exact science.
No, and that's what I laugh about on days like this. When you hear the team, fans of the team say, oh, we had a great draft. We had a great draft. Well, it's such a crapshoot. It really is. It's such a crapshoot. They had no idea. Like, the kid might be great right now. No question about it. He might be a great player. But you really have no idea. And you look at the history of the draft and what's a very low percentage of the players ever making it to the National Hockey League.
Yeah. And for Stu's case, it's funny you mentioned him. I might have been 2 months ago. Names come in and out of my brain. I looked him up. I go to Hockey DB. Just thrilled the fact that he's still playing hockey, making a decent living. There's a neighbor of ours, no longer a neighbor. My brother-in-law bought his place. Mike Scarbosa was the OHL scoring champion back in 2011, by the way, the year of that draft for the Sudbury Wolves. And, Mike's played with Colorado, Florida, Anaheim, Washington, but he's and his wife, now 2 kids, have done quite well playing out of Hershey. He's 31 years of age, just a solid pro. But I don't think he wasn't drafted. Josh Levo, his line mate, was drafted that year, right in that particular draft in Minnesota, along with David Brohl and Garrett Sparks. It was a pretty good draft for the Leafs when you think about the guys who went on to play some pro hockey. But it's a tough thing to do, and a lot of good hockey players. And I wish Stu got more games. I wish Tyler had gotten more games, but it didn't happen. And the Leafs, because of it, playing catch up. I mean, one of the drafts, I think it was I forget, maybe it was 2015 or 16. Kucherov is late second round by Tampa. I mean, these are nuggets. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if they got lucky or their scouting staff was better, but I'm not sure. Yeah, Dave, this would be a great podcast with Leaf Pro Scout Chief Dave Morrison, who's been through these from the amateur side and the pro side. They've hit some, they've missed on some.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that was a pretty good team that Stu played for in Mississauga with Devontae Smith-Pelly and Casey Cizikas and Dylan DeMello. Like, there was a lot of guys in that on that team that made it to the National Hockey League. So, yeah. Yeah,
hey, made it to the Memorial Cup.
Yeah. Devo won a cup for Ryan's Caps there.
Hello. Devontae Smith-Pelly, DC legend forever. He'll never pay for a drink in Washington for the rest of his life, and he shouldn't. You're right, Hendy, though. Like, the draft is an inexact science, but some teams, you mentioned Tampa, have an unbelievable draft record. I'd like to think my Caps are right there too. They always nail their first round picks, but it is a tough science. And I wonder, with all of your years covering drafts, just how ridiculous some of the comments you get are, because we saw it again last night, and Clarkey, particularly from your fan base. I saw a lot of Leaf fans last night just crapping on this poor kid who I think very highly of in Easton Cowan. And I know that, we never know how it's going to turn out, but calling games in the OHL as I do, I'd like to think I maybe have a little expertise on him. I think he's going to be a great pro. What is your opinion on that? Because like you said, a lot of these fans, they read draft ranking lists and they take it as gospel, and they just don't know what's going to happen.
Hey, this fan base at times crapped all over Mitch Marner in the month of October when the Leafs were having a rough time. And then you've got to look at the big picture. As we all know, it's a marathon. But Leafs Nation tends to microanalyze each and every shift, and that will go with draft picks as well. I got a chance to watch this kid. They made national broadcasts on Sportsnet several times, obviously, this past season. It was just great to see him. He's coming to a franchise, a team, an organization with the most incredible facilities. He is going to get every opportunity to improve, and they will not rush him. This isn't like the Leafs of old when they had to rush players. He's going to get every opportunity to season, of course, with London, and then eventually with the Toronto Marlies, and then up he comes. The Matthew Nyes, those kind of guys, you love it when you see where they hit on something like that in a second-round pick. But it's not easy to do. So, to the naysayers, maybe they've got something right about this, because the odds of any of these guys making it, as Clarkey's talked about, we would always do, Ryan. We'd always meet with Dave at the end of the draft, and he'd give us a little snippet of each guy. So I'd go 7th round pick, this guy, 6th round pick. This is when they had lots of picks. And Dave would come in with a very realistic, that he was never overwhelming in his praise. This is a project. This is somebody we think we can work with, et cetera, et cetera. So I hope their first round pick works. You know what? Maybe that 6th round pick will work. We have no idea, but they're coming to an organization, Clarkey, as you know, you go to the Ford Performance Center, that Marley dressing room, that Marley sheet of ice, the food and all that goes with it. And down at, it's not Rico anymore, but
Coca-Cola, I think. Yeah.
Coca-Cola. They've got great facilities. Those kids come home, they come in, they have breakfast, they work out, they go on the ice, they come off, there's a lunch prepared, and there's usually more than enough that they take home for dinner so that they don't have to go to various fast food joints like most 20 and 21-year-olds would like to do. They're fed well, and they're just programmed to get to the next level if they're able to do it, but they're going to be given every chance. And this Maple Leaf organization, there are 31 other teams, and I'll tell you, that practice facility for the Toronto Marlies is as good as most of the NHL teams around the NHL, without a doubt.
Henny, let's just dive into the team a little bit. Another disappointing ending. Well, they won a round, but that's not good enough. The core four is still around. Do you think they should be around? And would you suggest any changes to this team?
No, I think you keep the core four, because Clarkey and I, Ryan, I don't know what you'd have to say about this, but teams are chasing those kind of players, let alone a team that's not only drafted them, but they've drafted them and developed them. And so why are you going to give these guys away because they haven't succeeded yet? You know what? This team's made the postseason 7 straight years. And as a Capital fan, and I don't know if there's any Blues fans amongst your audience, but it took Ovechkin, I think it's 14 years to win his first Stanley Cup. It took the Blues always knocking on the door to win a Stanley Cup. San Jose has never won a Stanley Cup. There are no guarantees. But if you part company with one of these star players, unless you've got a really good idea as to what is coming back, and unless the cap kneecaps you and you've got to get rid of one of these players, you never get back what you're supposed to get. And you have to have good players to win the Cup. And if you don't have good players to win the Cup, well, you're not going to win it. And, the oldest of this batch is William Nylander. He just turned 27 in May. This is a young group coming into its prime. I hate for us to throw the baby out and all that bathwater when you've got a chance to keep them, and especially with the cap going up in a year from now. Some way, somehow, try to make this work. I think they've got to get better on the blue line, but I hope they keep the core 4. I think it'd be a shame if they lose and have to part company with one of these guys, namely William Nylander.
Yeah, it's going to be tough because the cap is their biggest barrier, right? Because of course it would be great to keep them because they're also talented and bring so many different things to the table. And Nylander's name gets brought up a lot because he needs a new deal. A lot of people are worried now because Pierre-Luc Dubois just got 8.5 in LA. So what's Nylander and his agent going to want now after getting very good value, outperforming that contract for the large bulk of it, making 6.9? It would be great to keep them all. My biggest worry for them, though, is you mentioned it, so we're on the same page here, Paul, is their blue line. I just look at it, and it's not a knock on any of the guys on it. I just think as a collection on this team, I just don't know if that blue line, when you look at past Stanley Cup winners, I just don't know if it's it, So the only way that I would want to relinquish one of those players would be if I could guarantee that I'm getting a extremely solid contributing factor that can change games and eat 25, 30 minutes on the blue line. I would want and need that coming back, Paul.
So Williams going out, you want a top 2 defenseman, essentially, is what you're saying. And I have to agree with you. I'm not going to settle even a third, like a top 3 defenseman and a whole bunch of something else. Williams 27. He's just coming into his prime. Like both ends of the ice, he's been a work in progress. Mike Babcock always talked about this team having to learn to do what it takes to win, and he'd always quote all the great teams, and of course he's coached a bunch of them, that this club that he had was nowhere near that. They were talented, but nowhere near it. So you get slapped in the face and kicked in the knees a few times, and then they finally won a round, and I was disappointed with how things went, in that second round. Really disappointed, but you got to tip your hat to Bobrovsky, the guys in front. Florida played a hell of a series. Hell, they went to the Stanley Cup final and simply ran out of gas. They didn't have the depth that Vegas had. But that's Ryan, that's the only way, if you're going to get a defenseman of that caliber coming back to augment what they've got right now. That's the only way I see you part company with a guy like William Nylander.
You have to, right? Because, sorry, Clarkey, like the team is in win now mode, right? Like you've only got Tavares for another 3 years here. He's not getting younger and he's still performing well. But what do the last couple years look like? Like they're in win now mode. They can't trade a Nylander or a Marner because the other 2 guys aren't going anywhere. Let's just be serious here. And they might not trade either of those other guys. Like Brad Treliving is playing the cards very close to the chest, but you can't trade. Let's just pretend, a Nylander or a Marner, and not get an immediate impact piece that raises the level of your team in an area of need, which is defense. I actually think they're pretty okay in goal. Samsonov outperformed any expectations I had of him, and that Wall kid looks like a blue chip prospect finally drafted by the Leafs. I don't think they should spend any money in net, but they need an upgrade at D, so that's the only way you can let go of a talent like that. Clarkey, go ahead.
No, I was going to say what I've said to you, Ryan. And it ticks me off when I hear some of the so-called experts on TV saying they have to change the core. It hasn't worked. And correct me if I'm wrong. There's no magic formula here.
No,
there's nothing saying that if you trade one of these guys, they're gonna win. I agree with you. They're all talented. As much as Mitch Marner, I call him Mr. Fancy Pants at times. He's a very talented player. There's no question about it.
Clarkey, the Olympics are next week.
Yeah,
he's one of our top two right wingers.
Absolutely.
He's probably the top right winger.
And as I said, you'll never win a trade with him. You're never going to win a trade, so you can't trade him. But I said at the end of the season that I think all four are coming back, and it looks like they're going to. I want to switch gears to coaching. You've seen a lot of coaches when you've covered the team.
Yeah.
Pat Quinn, Paul Maurice, Ron Wilson, to name a few. Randy Carlisle, Mike Babcock. Can Sheldon Keefe win a championship with this team?
I think he can. I really think he can. Plus he's been with this group for 4 years. I like Sheldon. He's a hardworking guy. People think that maybe he doesn't get. Well, he does get animated on the bench, not necessarily with players, but with the officials. But if we were eyes and ears in that dressing room like we used to be, we'd certainly know that he holds everybody accountable. He's also a player's coach. I mean, there's no way that Jason Spezza, first game as a Maple Leaf with a couple of dozen family members in the stands, is made a healthy scratch.
No,
not only Sheldon's coaching. Jason's not only in that game, but he's starting the first shift.
Yeah.
Not
to interrupt you, but when Borja passed away, there was 6 Swedes on the ice.
Yeah.
And that was Sheldon Keefe putting them there, right?
Exactly. There's a respect for that aspect of the game. And that's great. And that tugs at all of our hearts. But I think he's more than capable of getting the job done. And with this group, he's got 1 more year left on his deal. I don't know whether they're going to extend him along the way. Dubas, there are a bunch of players all go into the last years of their contract without an extension. I wouldn't consider him a lame duck coach. You look at the last 2 years, 115, 111 points. I've said it. I was on a podcast, and this was before the Cup was completed. I said, there's only going to be 2 happy teams this year, the Chicago Blackhawks and the eventual Stanley Cup champion. Everybody else is going to be either pissed off or very disappointed, or we can be better next fall. So it's the margins are really slim. And I just know the expectations are high, and they should be. I was 10 the last time they won a cup, but I've not seen a Leaf team as good or with the elite number of talent that we have on this club, with maybe 2 of those guys, if they stay as Leafs, going on Legends Row.
Yeah, I think they're this close. I really do. We've had Pooley on this show, and he challenges me on it when I say I think we're this close. He says, "Why do you think that?" But I just think they are, and you need a lot of luck. I'm sorry, but you need a lot of luck in the playoffs. Did you think going into the playoffs that Sergei Bobrovsky was going to perform like he did, and the Florida Panthers were going to make it to the final? No, no one did. They got a lot of luck on the way.
Sorry to interrupt. Ron Haynes, he always said, we were talking about what the Leafs have to do to win a cup, and he said, listen, I hadn't made the playoffs in my entire career until I go to Pittsburgh, and we're a goalpost away of being eliminated in the conference final by the Ottawa Senators, 2017. The puck doesn't go in. We get another chance and score at the other end. It's all over. They go on and win the Stanley Cup. But Ottawa, that puck goes in just as another fraction of an inch. They win that series. They maybe win the Stanley Cup. And where's Ottawa been since that moment of greatness? They haven't made the playoffs since. No. It's a fine line, and I agree with you on the luck. You've got to earn that luck. You've got to work for it, but you've got to have some.
Yeah.
Yep, you're absolutely right. Well, you know what? We're extremely lucky to have your passion and insight on here on the show, Paul. It's been great to have you back on. Glad you're doing well, and it was great to chat with you on the show. It's always fun chatting Maple Leafs hockey when Paul Hendrick is part of the conversation. Thanks so much for doing this, my friend.
Thank you. And, I think back to some great drafts, 2015, and Travis Dermott and Jeremy Bracco, Mitch Marner, of course. And then the following year, I think we only had a couple of picks, and it was Austin and Joseph Woll. And Woll's family, I'll never forget. We got to interview them. They were just, brother, sister, mom, and dad. It was just great. And of course, Clarkey, going back, I've said it on this show before, but the work that you guys did to get us set up for that big game in Michigan on New Year's Day, I'll never forget it. And it was cold it was brutally cold.
It was.
But the logistics that you and Jamie did going down there that fall to get things set up for what we were able to accomplish. I think we put out 30-odd hours of content, something I'm very proud of in the conditions that we got to put it out. And I thank you and Jamie and all who worked, and our technical crew, Jen Dennett. I can go on and on. It was just fantastic.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun for sure. And I'm still shocked to this day that they let Jamie and I, and when I say let us, they sent us to Michigan like a week before to scope out the area and come back. We just drove down one day, but just that little thing helped immensely when we got there. We've never been to the big house, so we didn't have a clue. And you don't want to walk into a place like that with a show on your shoulders thinking, where do we park? Just like logistics, right? All that stuff.
And a foot of snow falling at 7 a.m. onward. Yeah, you can't factor that in.
No. Anyway, thanks, Henny.
Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. All right. We'll be right back here on Instigating with Tom Valcke, longtime MLB scout, instructor, baseball guru. He's on to chat Jays next here on Instigating. Welcome back to Instigating with Clarkey and Drury. Ryan Drury still here alongside Clarkey. Very pleased now to chat some baseball with one of our favorites, one of our favorite guests from last year, longtime MLB pro scout, instructor, baseball guru. We're very pleased to welcome back our friend Tom Valcke. Tom, how are you?
Gents, it's great to be back with you guys. It's been a little while. And you caught me in a bit of a transition. I've been out in BC here for about 7 months, and I'm literally beginning my trek back to Ontario in about 2 hours. So we're doing this at the perfect time.
It sounds that way. Well, let's just dig, Tom, right into the issues here, because we have a lot to discuss with you. And the issue du jour here in Canada, particularly, of course, Toronto, is what's up with Alek Manoah. Man, oh man. The Jays season overall, it's been, I would call it disappointing, in the very least underwhelming. He is at the center of it, and it's not getting any better anytime soon, Tom, with what went down in the Florida Complex League the other day. Have you ever seen, because I don't know if I have, I can't think of an example of a player in any sport that has been hammered this hard with such a precipitous fall from grace year to year. Have you ever seen anything like this?
Not in the same time frame. I mean, obviously Ricky Romero comes to mind, and he's still a young guy, and he's young as far as his experience. He's only thrown 35 innings in the minor leagues, and I don't think in his sort of card catalog, in his database, in his reference points, there's not a time in his career where he's really failed and had to sort of work out of it. And I think being the opening day starter, being a Cy Young candidate last year, it's the last thing in his mind that could have happened, struggling. And there's probably so many people that care, that have worked on his mechanics, worked on his body, worked on his mental state, emotional strategy, the new pitch count thing. That could have been a small factor that sort of tilted him a little, because he's a guy that, if you remember him in his prime last year, he'd walk around the mound a few times, need a break, need to look up at whoever he's praying to. and that could have been a little thing. I think just some little things rocked him, and he didn't have a place of reference to go back to and say, here's how I got out of that last time. And I think they certainly did the right thing by sending him down. That outing the other day, I don't think one person cares about it. I don't think it's a PR line when they're saying, we don't care about giving up 10 or 11 runs in 3 innings. I mean, naturally you would have wanted to see him go out and just light the place up. But generally in those when you're in that state, when you're in those types of programs that he's in right now, performance is truly secondary. They're just trying to look at mechanics, looking at what small or large, minor or major corrections they're trying to put into him physically, mechanically. And it's one thing doing it in the bullpen, but even if you're Alek Manoah, when you go out into a game and guys are in uniforms and there's umpires, I don't care if it's the back lot of Dunedin or whatever, that's the real test of, when you had all those wires hooked up to you and cameras on you and coaches analyzing your separation or your point of extension or whatever it's going to be. It's different than when you get into a game. Can you carry those changes that you're trying to make into a game setting? And I think that's just going to be part of the process. I don't think he's going to be back soon. I'm in my mind, I'm kind of hoping he's back for the September run, and maybe he can just drop in on us and be right back where he was. Thank God for Barrios and Kikuchi, because they really have made up the difference.
Yeah. Confidence is such a major thing, as you well know. Do you think it's more mental with Alek, or do you think, because at some point in time, you can get too much information in you, right? Like too many things flying at you, and that's got to mess with your head. So I don't know how you get over that, but what would you suggest?
Yeah, I do personally believe it's much more mental than physical. I made a reference the other day to when Roy Halladay was sent down to the minor leagues, and he began his appearance in the major leagues. He was 21. They sent him down when he was 23. He came back and became the legend Roy Halladay. And Halladay was never one for microphones and whatnot. I remember kind of not even knowing what his voice sounded like, because he was just never a guy that cared about that stuff. And I remember the fan 590 was going to interview him at his retirement, and they had said he's going to talk about what happened down in Dunedin when he got sent down and what was the big turnaround. I was so into hearing that I couldn't miss it. And I remember I was in St. Mary's, and I drove up to the east end of James Street to make sure no static from the fan 590, kind of the high point of town. I wanted to hear Halladay so much. And what really surprised me was that he credited Mel Queen and the other pitching people who were down there helping him. But who he really clearly said influenced him the most and had the biggest impact was Harvey Dorfman. Harvey Dorfman was the author. He goes by H.A. Dorfman. He's passed away now about a decade ago. But he wrote the mental aspects of baseball and the ABCs of pitching. And the Jays brought Dorfman to Halladay in person. So he not only had his book forever for a reference, because Halladay said he kept referencing the book to remind him of the conversations they had, but he had Dorfman one-on-one. And he said that made that was far and away the biggest significant change in him. So I believe the same thing could very well be true with Manoah, and somehow they're going to have to sort of, without sending him away 2 years, sort of give him the tools upstairs and the steps to access those tools without having lived the experience of failing and recovering and what he's got to go to. So it's going to be quite a challenge.
Yeah. Tom, I wonder, you've scouted so many players. You've seen a lot of good players at every position, including pitcher. I wonder, with the way that modern pitchers are now, we know that he's very reliant on his slider to set up his fastball. He throws a 4-seamer. He loves his 2-seamer. He's a little too reliant on it. Occasionally he'll throw a changeup. Do you think it would help him when he's struggling with the movement and location on his fastball? Do you think that it would help him to add another pitch to his repertoire? And if he were to do that, what pitch would you suggest he add?
That's a great question. I think when he doesn't have it, in the brief 2 years we got to watch him, and I was such a fan that was when Manoah got the start, and I was always on the field at night. I was working at baseball during the day, but I was volunteering at night, and that wasn't a Jays in 30 when I get home thing. That was a complete PVR of the game. I wanted to see Manoah from start to finish. So I really have seen him a lot, of course, mostly on television, and I find when he's off a little bit, to me, he seems like the kind of guy that needs to sort of throw through it, not back off of the fastball if it's the fastball that night that's not clicking, but rather throw more of them until he kind of finds that feel again. Maybe didn't have enough in the bullpen, or maybe something knocked him out of sync. And it seems to me he was better at sticking with it and maybe suffering a little bit with a hit or a walk or whatever. But until he kind of just gets that perfect groove again and looseness and everything else. And back to the mental thing, as you guys know, I like to talk, and I love kids, and I love coaching. Sometimes I'm standing behind the turtle watching a kid take batting practice, and I'm helping him because I care and I like him and I know what I'm talking about. But sometimes that turns into a lot of this. And the guy is in there trying to swing a bat, and suddenly he's swinging and missing at batting practice because I've tilted the pinball machine. I gave him so much, it's just information overload. And what I do at that point, because I know I'm vulnerable as a coach that I fall into that, is tell the kid, whoa, just back off for a sec. These next 5 swings, I want you to say out loud the word ball when the ball leaves the pitcher's hand. And I want you to say the word bat when you connect with the ball in the contact zone. That's all I want you to do. And someone in sports science told me this because I wouldn't be smart enough to have ever known this. But in order to accomplish that, when you've got basically a half second in baseball from when it leaves the hand till you have to decide whether or not to swing and then execute the swing, you've got a half a second. And if you, no matter what's clouding your mind or how many stats Tom Valcke just shoved in your ear or whatever, if you say the word ball when it leaves the pitcher's hand and say out loud the word bat when you connect, there's absolutely nothing else that could have gone on in your brain at that time. You can't handle anything else. So it just shoves everything aside. It brings you back to where every hitter should be. Where's it released and how's it feel? And Manoah needs a version of that in pitching. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Just to be able to shove everything aside, something he just heard, something he just thought of, something the catcher's telling him because he just came to the mound, something the manager told him last inning when there was a mound visit. Just got to shove that aside and just get back to Alek Manoah throwing the ball, just like that hitter with the ball hit drill that I call it.
You know, Clarkey, I know you want to dig now into the general team stuff. The only reason I brought that question up is because I read a really interesting article with Corbin Burns, and he was talking a little bit about, obviously, the Milwaukee Ace. He's one of the best pitchers in baseball. And he was talking a bit about when he was struggling earlier in his career, and his catcher at the time suggested that he try throwing a cutter. And he didn't really like the pitch. But now, as everyone knows, Corbin Burns' backdoor cutter might be the best pitch in baseball. And I just wonder if Manoah could maybe incorporate something like that. Clarkey, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to get Tom's opinion on the Jays. You called it disappointing, Ryan. I call it really disappointing so far. It's just so inconsistent, I think, is the other word I would use. And it's so disappointing. I texted our producer, Adam, and Ryan the other day, Tom, when they lost Game 1 to Oakland. It's just so disappointing seeing what's been going on and like the hitting, like what's going on with Vladdy. 1 home run at home. Let's dig into him a little bit. What do you now? Two.
Let's give him credit.
I don't want to jip him there, but 2 home runs at home. What's going on with Vladdy?
Yeah, I think I get so frustrated with these guys.
Same.
But I also feel a love and passion for this team the last couple of years. Certainly in the 15-16s when they finally got back to the playoffs. The biggest reward for me at that point was my kids who never got to see the Jays in a playoff game, never got to experience the Rogers Center because it was back to 92, 93. And they were all not even born yet. But I thank endlessly Alex Anthopoulos because I got to take my children to the Rogers Center when the place was crazy, hairy, hair on fire, wild, and they got to experience it. And now this version of the team, I think my frustration is probably the same level as previous frustrations, except it's got more exclamation points because I'm just so in love with the team. And so I feel like back when I was a kid growing up in Windsor, the 1968 Tigers, they won the World Series. That was 54 years ago. Well, the lineup, it was Stanley McCullough, Kaline, Cash, Horton, Northup, Freehand, Wirt. And then when I played outside, it was always McLean and Lolich. I had a two-man rotation in my little childhood fantasy. But there's the lineup from 54 years ago. You never forget it. I had that kind of love and passion for that club. And this is the way I feel about this version of the Blue Jays. So I think you guys are the same. They're so easy to like. I think our frustrations are even magnified because we like them so darn much. And the other night, as you said, Oakland shuts us out. And then the next day we get 5 doubles on the first inning and put 7 on the board or whatever, 6, and that's frustrating. It's great. It's better than getting shut out again. But
yeah,
I can't believe how much the pitchers have saved this team. Not only with the absence of this expected star Manoah gone, but while the hitting just puts up 2 to 3 runs every single game.
Well, the hits with runners in scoring position is atrocious right down the lineup pretty much.
Well, did you hear that one stat when we were playing Texas there 10 days ago, whatever it was? And Shulman said that I think the Jays and the Rangers had the same number of hits this year, but the Rangers had scored 100 more runs than the Jays.
Unreal.
To your point, Chris. Yeah. This team, you just have to expect them to score 7 a game with this top to bottom lineup. And they just aren't, or they're just, I can't believe for half the season, 81 games, we're not talking a small sample size here, that they consistently just, it's like one guy gets a hit, 3 make an out, and they never can string them together.
Yeah.
I'd like to say I see a change coming, but that's half a season. That's sort of becoming embedded. And Chris, your mention about Vladdy, this is the guy that influences the team up and down. And it's the baggage, good baggage in many ways, that comes with him clearly being the leader, the captain, the superstar, the focal point, the everything guy. And if he can start finding himself and also casting aside maybe all kinds of things, I've got a mechanical thing I'd love to be able to, I wish I could talk to him. But anyway, if he can break out, then being the top gun, it'll shake into the team. But I really believe he is going to determine the fate of these bats. And this is a team that's got to be scoring 7 runs a game for the next 80 games, maybe 5, but they're capable of 7 because top to bottom, there's never a point where they get and I go, oh no. Even Biggio, when he hits, he's got such a sharp, clear-cut swing. That guy needs to be playing every day. I'm not saying necessarily in Toronto because I love Espinal. I love him, and he's being so underused. I also see why Merrifield gets a great time over at second, but Biggio's got to go somewhere and play every day. He's going to become I believe, a better than average major leaguer if they just let him swing every day. He's got a gorgeous swing. But even when they get to the bottom of those guys, I have great hopes. And Kirk is out of the lineup right now. But now you got Jansen knocking home runs. You got guys at the bottom who you think are going to produce. There's just never a part of the lineup where I want to go and make a sandwich because I believe it's going to happen. It's going to happen. man, 81 games, that's getting old for expecting it to happen all the time.
Yeah.
Tom, I wonder on your note, we're talking with longtime scout, longtime baseball instructor, Tom Valcke, and you brought something up that I want to touch on, how you'd love to chat with Vladdy about his swing. Well, listen, I want to point something out, and I know I'm probably scapegoating because every fan out there right now thinks that they have the answer. We got to fire John Schneider. We got to make a trade. We got to fire Ross Atkins. A lot of people, and I'm kind of on this train too, and it's not because, I know him. I bet he's a great guy. I wonder often to myself when we're watching this lineup struggle to hit, particularly when guys are on base. You brought up that wild Texas stat. The Jays are 25th in Major League Baseball in average when they have runners in scoring positions. Unacceptable. And I sit there and wonder, what is it exactly that Guillermo Martinez is or is not doing as their hitting coach? Because there was a story that really bothered me over the weekend when they played Oakland. They lose game 1 Friday night. They win Saturday, and Vladdy hits his first home run at the Rogers Center. He does it again the next night. And they were talking on the broadcast about how his uncle was in town and sat down and did some work with him. And on one hand, I was thrilled because he finally hit a homer at home and looked like old Vladdy for 2 days. But Tom, on the other hand, I was so frustrated because I'm like, well, they have a hitting coach on staff and his uncle comes in and fixes the problem. What? Like, I look at up and down this lineup, and you mentioned it, Tom, outside of Bo Bichette and Kevin Kiermaier, who is overachieving far beyond what any of us thought he'd do with his bat, I would venture to say every other player on the roster is underachieving at the plate. What's up?
Well, this sounds childish, and I guess it's probably why I'm not wearing Schneider's cap. But I know for a fact when they take batting practice, not because of this mushrooming situation of runners in scoring position, because those numbers, we hear them all the time about the Blue Jays, but other teams aren't that far. It's not like there's a whole bunch of teams that are batting 500 with men in scoring position. The Jays are way down, but they're not that much worse than the other teams, except in the placement of 1 to 30. But when they practice, man on second base, nobody out, let's get them over. When they practice, man on third, 1 out, 2 strikes, work on contact. They do those things. I did those things back when I was coaching youngsters, when my 2 of my 3 who were ball players, and I was coaching their teams. I did those very same things. I remember throwing the batting practice and saying to them, not only is there a man on third and 1 out, and our team breaks on contact in that situation, so you got to put the ball in play, but you got 2 strikes. The umpire's got a gargantuan zone, and you dated that umpire's daughter last week and you didn't treat her well. He hates you. So anything close, you got to put and I would go on and on having fun with the kids, and I would have the other kids literally standing on the backstop sometimes, and it was kind of anything goes. Say what you want to the hitter, get in his head, because peer pressure is the ultimate, our bodies, our stress level, our adrenaline. Peer pressure is a magnificent way to practice answering things in the clutch. So kids will be screaming to their lungs about, your grandma wears army boots, whatever it be. And the kids had to perform. And if they didn't get the ball in play and it was a reasonable strike with a great big strike zone, then they had to go run to the pole and back. And I know that sounds amateurish for a major leaguer to run a pole, but I don't think the routine they're doing it's just the routine because they always do. Let's start with outside, go the other way. Okay, let's go. I think there's nothing wrong with hiding it and putting it out there to the team that just exactly what we've just talked about the running and scoring position and the problems. We're gonna work on that. We're gonna work on it more. We're gonna discard other things instead of strengthening our strengths. We're gonna put those aside for a bit, and we're gonna work our asses off on this getting guys over. I can't stand when guys on the Blue Jays swing for the fence with 2 strikes. It drives me nuts because it's a strikeout and the guy doesn't even get a chance to move up a base. Yeah. Or how about when, and I fully admit that maybe the game has changed and because I'm this far of a has-been now, maybe there's something I don't know. But it drives me nuts when my favorite announcers, Shulman, Buck, Joey, love those guys. And yet they say so matter-of-factly, yeah, it looks like he was looking for a curveball there, and that fastball froze him. How on earth, and you guys tell me because you might be around him more, when is it ever okay in baseball to guess soft when you've got 2 strikes on you? You should basically never guess soft, but if you're going to guess soft, I'm saying curveball, changeup, whatever, guess it on with 1 or 2, with no strikes or 1 strike. You can't do it with 2 strikes because you can't adjust from expecting soft to something hard and react. You can always do something about guessing fast and reacting to something soft because it gets to you slower. So you can maybe foul it off or maybe at least put it in play. Yeah. I don't understand how, and these announcers we have, they're the best. And they just say it so routinely. Yeah, he was looking for a changeup there, and he came in with a fastball.
Yeah,
unacceptable.
Well,
unacceptable.
They work for the team.
Yeah, they anyway, do work for the team.
Anyway,
and Tom, you're on our team, man. We could have you on for 3.5 hours talking about this, and I wish we could, man. Like, it's great to have you back on. I'm glad things are going well for you out there. I know it's an exciting time for your family, so all the best to you guys, and looking forward to having you back in Ontario soon.
Yeah, hope to run into you guys. Going to be there July and August, and who knows, maybe a lot longer. It just depends on the someone deciding that I don't know. You got a 78-year-old guy sitting in the most important chair in the world. Why can't a 62-year-old guy still work in baseball? Man,
exactly.
Come on, I still got something to give. I like to think so. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I completely agree. Well, we'll have to get together, watch a game, have a couple cold ones, and pick apart some swings. That would be fun, my friend.
Love that.
All right. We'll be right back to wrap things up here this week. It's been a great show here on Instigating with Clarkey and Drury. We'll be right back. Back to wrap things up here on Instigating with Clarkey and Drury. Thanks so much to our great guest, man, Paul Hendrick. It doesn't get better than him when it comes to talking about the Maple Leafs. The guy is a lifer when it comes to the Leafs. Clarkey, you know that you worked with him for so long. He's a beauty, and so's Tom Valcke, longtime Major League Baseball scout, instructor, hitting coach. Dude, the guy's done it all. We're gonna get Tom back on. We gotta dig more into the Jays with him. That guy's brilliant.
Whole hour.
Wrapping up the show. Yeah, we have to do it.
Who's that voice
joining us here?
Who's that voice?
That's producer Adam, and I mentioned earlier when we were talking to Henny about just production costs. Adam is our production cost. This dude, Adam, you put so much work into the show. You make us look good every week. This is the guy. This is the face behind it all, man. And you got to be happy. You got to be happy. I'm happy with my team's draft. Clarkey, despite the outrage from some of your fan base, I think Easton Cowan's going to work out great for you. How about Colorado? I like big Callum Ritchie. Colorado, you got to love that, Clarkey.
Hold on, Adam. Before we talk about Adam's Colorado Avalanche, I just want to say, Larry Hudson's, we have the new Colorados and Canyons, and they are a nice small truck, totally redesigned for 2023. And
I like those Colorados.
The Colorados they're a nice
cool,
truck,
man.
They are a cool truck. If I had to pick one, I don't know why. I just sort of like the Canyons better.
I get it.
But they're like basically the same truck. It's personal preference. You can get different options on whatever truck, but they're so nice now. Like, not that they were not nice before, but we're getting them in now here at Larry Hudson's, and you can put in an order. We had one on the lot this past week. It was an AT4, Canyon AT4, which is my favorite package. So anyway, we have them coming in now. So if you want a Colorado or Canyon or Silverado or Sierra or Envision or Terrain, we got them at Larry Hudson's because, as you know, Ryan, Hudson's has it.
And
yes,
more
they
than one
do.
color,
Go
I'm
see.
sure now too. More than one color too, right?
Any color that you want. Clarkey
Absolutely.
and our friends at Larry Hudson's, they've got it.
So sorry to interrupt.
And, yes, no,
Colorado
absolutely.
Avalanche just sort of took me off.
Well,
That's
I
okay.
see the Colorado jersey back there, obviously, with producer Adam and Mr. Joe, Burnaby Joe himself. And you got the attack jersey back there, too. I just want to congratulate Owen Sound attack captain Colby Barlow, drafted by the Winnipeg Jets. Next to Michkov, I think that Barlow might be the steal of the first round for Winnipeg to get him at 18. I'm a big Barlow guy. Thrilled for him. Thrilled that you watch this show with us Friday nights at 8, Sunday nights at 9 with our friends on Whiteman TV. That's channel 6 for Whiteman subscribers. You can watch the show on our YouTube channel Friday nights, debuting at 9 p.m. You can find the podcast on all the best podcast apps out there. Why aren't you listening if you're not going to watch? You can find us everywhere, and you can find us on social media at Instigating Pod for more great content and access to the show. For myself, Ryan Drury, Paul Hendrick, Tom Valcke, that's Clarkey. That is producer Adam, the star of the show. We will be back. Not next week. We're going to take next week off. Enjoy our
Happy
Canada
Canada
Day.
Day.
Yes,
Yeah.
It's going to be my birthday
I'm off.
as well.
I'm off on
So-
a little vacation. I'm going out of the country. I can't disclose where I'm going because it is a surprise to my girlfriend. But I am going out of the country, and hopefully we make it back safely. But it's going to be a fun weekend.
Oh,
I
you'll be
was
fine.
going to say,
You'll be
that's
fine.
the famous last words before someone goes missing. I
No,
can't just
she's fine. Sue will be fine.
location.
Sue will be fine. Everything will be fine. Maybe the family's
Okay.
worried. I don't know, but Sue and family, you'll
Thank
be fine.
God.
I'll bring you back safely. Don't worry. We're gonna have some.
I
have
believe
a
you.
fun time. It's her birthday,
man.
so happy birthday, Sue! It's her birthday.
Thanks.
Oh,
it's
happy
going to be
birthday,
my
Sue.
birthday, too. It's going to be my
Happy birthday,
too.
Ryan.
Happy
What
birthday,
day is it?
Ryan.
Ryan, what
July
day is it?
3rd.
July
July
3rd,
3rd,
okay.
all right. Everybody enjoy their Canada Day. Enjoy celebrating. We'll be back in a couple weeks with more Instigating.